Welcome to the Lawless Astrology channel. My name is Dabney and I'm an evolutionary astrologer. Today I'm welcoming James Burgess from Ireland, who is an incredible astrologer, but he kind of takes it beyond that. He's very spiritual and he has a website that I consult often, and he has a YouTube channel that I consult often for the Sabian Symbols. So we're going to be talking largely on this podcast about the Sabian symbols, but he also really works with the Elven star. And if you're like, what is that? He's going to explain what it is, because I had never heard of it, but he shared his book with me, and as I was reading it I was like, wow, this is really good information. It's going to take me a little while to digest, but I need to really sit down with this. So James, welcome.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Dabney.
Yeah. So the first question, so a lot of people on my channel may not be familiar with what the Sabian symbols are. So can you just sort of sorry, gun itch. Can you set us up for what the Sabian symbols are? Where did they come from? How do you use them?
Okay, thank you. The normal approach to astrology is to divide a circle by 12 and get 12 zodiac signs with which we're all familiar. However, quite a lot of people are like Taurus. Taurus isn't very well defined by that one word, like in my case. But when you study 360 degrees, and in my case, then you get the 16th degree of Taurus, you can look at the Sabian symbol of that degree, then you get a very much more clear, definitive statement of who and what you are. In my case, I am an old man attempting in vain to reveal the mysteries. That's my Sabian symbol. And I didn't understand it when I wasn't an old man, but the older I got, the more I realized I'm not doing a very good job at getting people to understand the way I think. However, I am exactly what my Sabian symbol tells me. So the Sabian symbols takes a very clear, definitive look at what otherwise would be relatively vague if you just look at the zodiac sign. So that's what they are. Now, this idea was already present over 100 years ago. There were two or three writers who were trying to put meanings to each degree of the zodiac. But Mark Edmund Jones, a leading astrologer in the 1920s in California, wasn't satisfied with them for good reason. They're rubbish. And he said to the leading psychic of the time, who happened to be one of his students in an astrology class, Elsie Wheeler, let's go and do this job properly. Off they went to Balboa Park in San Diego one sunny day, and she spent all day channeling these 360 images. So he would hold up a card with pencil marked in the corner, which might say Aries 5 or Taurus 17, and he couldn't see it and she couldn't see it, and he held up the card and she just give it an image like the Pope, a cat arguing with a mouse, and all of these really strange images, and he'd just write them down quickly, and she'd do the next and the next and the next. 360 is a very, very big number. So the next 30 years was spent trying to work out a system around this. Now other people got involved, most celebratedly Dane Rudhyar. He was really into all of this, and he and Mark Edmund Jones were friends and came up with two versions of the symbols, which I think we need to understand means that they're not written in stone. So if you actually see them differently yourself, okay, so did Dane Rudhyar, and I don't think there's a higher praise for the flexibility of the Sabian symbols. So Mark Edmund Jones first, he put an explanation of what the meanings are behind the signs. Rudhyar did his slightly differently with a much more spiritual spin, because he was into the Vedic tradition and Hindu knowledge and all that. Not much was done after the death of these two guys until the modern era. Now, some people have made commentary on the Sabian symbols in the modern era, but they haven't really changed much about what was originally said. Now, that's 100 years ago. And that was using the concepts and the languaging and the politics and the social mores of that time. Now, in these last 10 years, I've been kind of bringing up to date the languaging. Like, nobody knows what a topsy is. You need to know it's a slave girl. People would call a native Indian, Native American woman a squaw in those days. Well, that's offensive, you know. So we had to kind of re-language it in terms of the modern way of thinking, but also humanity's consciousness has evolved in the time since Rudyard wrote it, which was all of 50 odd years ago, you know, and more for Jones. So we've got a different take on it now, and I've tried to bring that into my website, definition of the Sabians.
That was a wonderful explanation. You know, I kick myself when I think that they're very there, you have to be on the spiritual path in some ways to really understand them, and you have to think metaphorically. And when I was first getting involved in astrology and just learning the basics, I purchased a used copy of the original Dane Rudyard book. And I remember consulting it and not fully grasping it or understanding it. And fast forward, you know, I had a kid, I was cleaning the house, and I, you know, gave it to Goodwill. And then, you know, all these years later, I'm like, wait, I want a copy of that. They're no longer available. And like the used copies go for like over $1,000 or something. And I was like, well, I hope somebody worthy found it at the Goodwill. But I think what I'm trying to say with this story is that they are kind of lofty sometimes. They really, but they bring you deeper, and you have to almost be ready to accept that message.
I think that's a very important point. I was not.
Yeah.
I was used to them when I was in my mid to late 30s. I thought, all right, I'll write them down, and when the time will come, I'll look. And that was 30 years later that I really did look. And luckily, that coincided with my discovery of the depth and wisdom of Rudyard, you know. And I think there is a book within which the Sabian Symbols appears, which is less difficult to find. I can't think of the name at the moment, but if you can find it if you want to. But yes, first point you're making is that you have to be spiritual to get them. Yes and no. I mean, you certainly have to be aware of the two sides of the brain, the logical and the non-rational. And if you don't get that, then there's no chance. You're just wasting your time. And there are some people that approach it rationally, and they just can't get it to work. It doesn't work. So you have to invest your own willingness to interpret the ambiguous, which is exactly how daily horoscope predictions work. Artful ambiguity. It's not nonsense. It's just that you got to make up your mind about what it means. You know, it's quite powerful magic in a way. So the Sabian symbols give you that. However, you can't just say, oh, that's what that means. Why? I just feel it is. That doesn't track. They do have a definitive scope, and you just got to tease out of that what fits you today. And it can fit in various different ways. And this is where I'll come to talk about the Elven star. If should I introduce that topic now?
Let's still work. Let's jam on the Sabian symbols for a little bit longer, if that's okay with you. Is that work? Does that work?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So the thing that I want people to actually know about your website, and I want them to actually know about your work, because in some ways that's how I found your work, was that I no longer had the book. And so, like I said, in my 20s, the book wasn't resonating, but now it does, right? Like, you know, I've evolved, and I think a lot of people that watch this channel are very much tied in with something bigger than ourselves. And they do recognize that you don't always think with your rational brain. So is it okay? I'm going to quick share my chart. We talked about that, just so you could give a couple examples so people how they can find the Sabian symbols and how they can use it in their own chart, and how they can then go to your website and you literally, like, you enter your birth information and you've got it on there. Like, I don't even need the book because you are a fount of knowledge. So let me just quickly do this just so I can So this is my chart. We had talked about doing a transit, but James said, let's just do your own chart. So how, first of all, James, do you do readings or do you just kind of counsel people on how to look at the Sabian symbols in their own chart?
I do readings sometimes. I'm a little less available now than once I was, but I can do readings if people are interested. And I tend to do it differently from other people. One of the, just as an aside here, but one of the problems I think relatively inexperienced astrologers have is that they take on too much. I saw a woman once and she had 100 points listed in her chart, all the fixed points, the asteroids and all of that stuff. And she said, oh, look, investors transiting my series or something. I said, is that what you're focused on? Oh, yeah. I said, are you aware that you've got a Pluto square moon happening today? She said, no. So have a look. She couldn't see something of that importance because she couldn't see the wood for the trees. And I advise my students, there's only one thing that people really want to talk about when they're interested in counseling. It's different for self-examination. When you're studying your own chart, this is not what I mean. By all means, get into all of the detail that you want to. But when you're talking to someone else, there's only one thing that they're interested in talking about, and that is the outer planet transit of the moment. Nothing else is worth discussing. So that's tendency. That's what I want to discuss most of the time, with people. So, you're going through your, oh, I won't talk about it now. Anyway, let's look at your Sabian symbols. The first thing I would do is look at the sun. It's in the 29th degree of Cancer. So 2846 is not 28, it's 29 degrees Cancer. You have to get that right or you're missing the point. And people have said to me, well, I did the wrong one and it still worked. Yeah, well, the one before works because it's kind of step by step by step. You learn the previous one in order to be able to learn the current one, if you see what I mean. So we're not at all unlikely to know quite a lot about the previous Sabian symbol in any delineation. Anyway, in your case, a muse weighing twins. And it's all about weighing alternatives. We must balance rational and non-rational wisdom to optimize opportunities. This is a discussion we've just been having. You're really on that one. Balancing our personal experiences against accepted knowledge. People teach this, but actually, I feel that. What can I do about that? I'm not going to ignore traditional wisdom, but I'm not going to ignore my own intuition. You got to find the balance between those two things as well. Knowledge and experience are the twin poles of existence. That's the wisdom here. Experience is your take on life. Knowledge is what somebody else took from life. However wise they were, however wonderful is their reputation, the fact is it's not you. It's not your experience. Now, we go through the stepping stone of taking guidance from someone, especially people that enjoy general admiration, but that's still only 50%. Your own personal experience, in fact, I would give that 51%, if not more. If you've become somebody who's got agency, if you claim your own authority, your experience is gold. If it disagrees with the given wisdom, okay, look into it, discuss it, don't ignore it, of course, but you don't have to accept somebody just because they're said to be clever or wise or established. So Cancer, that's essential. The essence of who you are is the sun. What's essential to you, Dabney, is that you consider both sides of a question. Sensitively in Cancer, you consider her point of view as well as your own. You consider intuition as well as rational thought. You consider the traditional knowledge as well as modern points of view. You'll consider it all, and then you'll probably feel the answer, feel the decision, because you're a Cancer. Just because we're studying Sabian symbols doesn't mean we're not studying zodiac astrology. It's an additional thing, not an alternative thing. Now, if I continue and look at your moon, which is in the 4th degree of Virgo, 3 degrees 27, the 4th degree of Virgo, black child playing with white children, freedom from prejudice. Like I said to you earlier, it's not even worth discussing. It's so obvious that those of us who are open to astrology, we tend to be free from prejudice. You know, we certainly don't get into racial prejudice and things like that. And you know, it's almost not a wisdom because it's so obvious, but it's a very profound wisdom. If you haven't got it, you really need it because you're blocked. You know, you're just cutting off a big part of your brain.
So when you look at a chart, do you really kind of, so let's say I'm someone watching this and they pull up their chart and they go to your website, and would you suggest they start with the sun and moon and rising sign? Or would you say, look at, you know, like my Uranus is on my midheaven. It's angular. It's an important planet in my chart. Would you suggest that they, you know, that they look at, or the 0 Venus, like what would you suggest they look at first so they don't get lost?
Okay, so I'll take you through the process that I'm going through now. I haven't seen your chart before. Pluto is in the 2nd degree of Aquarius right now. Have you got anything at 2 degrees fixed? No. Neptune is in the 2nd degree of Aries. Have you got anything at 2 degrees cardinal? Venus is the 1st degree. Pluto, the 5th degree of Libra. So you've got a Pluto square Venus, and that's being transited by Neptune. On the face of it, that's what we need to talk about. Let me look at Uranus. It's 27 Taurus-ish. Can't remember exactly. Anything there? No.
No,
okay.
nothing.
So I want to talk to you about Neptune transiting your Pluto square Venus. Now, you might not want to talk about that.
That's fine. It's absolutely fine. It's fine. I love watching another astrologer's process.
Now, so that's in the back of my mind, and I'm going to write that down. You know, Neptune transiting Pluto square Venus, exclamation mark. And then I'll just ease it into the conversation. I'll say, okay, angular Uranus, that's exciting. Stellium in Cancer in the 7th house. Oh, I bet your husband likes that. And I would say a few little things. Oh, Chiron, also an angular opposition Uranus, like many people, forming a bit of a wide, but nevertheless a real T-square. And I would just start talking things up. And at some point, you're going to get so excited, you're going to give me information. That might be verbal, you might speak up, but you might just smile or move your body forward. And I was, okay, now, how are you feeling about all of this? And I'll give you the opportunity to guide me into the conversation. So that's the courtesy. You're coming to me. My courtesy is to ask you what you want to talk about. So you'll want to talk about all of that. We'll talk about all of that. And then I'll steer the conversation around to what you actually really need to talk about, which is this Neptune transit. That's what I would do. And I would ignore all of the rest completely because it's a consultation, not a self-analysis.
So would I then look at the Sabian symbol of 1 degree Venus and 5 degree Pluto to help me understand my own psychology, and then look at the transiting Neptune degree? How do you do that with transits?
So what you've just done is responded to my enthusiasm to talk about the square and its transit. So now I have permission to talk to you about it. And what you've just said is exactly right. Your 1st degree of Cancer, that's the 2 flags. One is unfurled. So Venus changing from the furled to the unfurled flag would be somebody who's like Venus in Cancer person, willing to change loyalties because terms of reference have changed. So I would sort of find out whether or not at some point in the past you'd had an approach to relationship like this, probably one-to-one serious relationship, because this is 7th house, and you changed. You finished that relationship and you moved to another one. That's something that could well be possible, and I would look into that. And then I would find that Pluto, see, the degree of Pluto in Libra, the fifth degree of Libra, might be relevant, but what's much more relevant is Pluto whacking at your Venus. I mean, like, forget the Sabian symbol. You got Pluto monitoring how you are in relationship. Are you faithful? Are you truthful? Are you authentic? Are you powerful? Are you disempowered? What's going on here? So that actually matters more than the Sabian symbol. But if you've looked at that, which you probably have, you studied all of this for decades, no doubt. So you're probably saying, yeah, but I still can't get the nuances. So, okay, man teaching true inner knowledge. This is Pluto's Sabian symbol in that square. Transmission of essence. Okay, so there's a part of you that's a real teacher. I mean, not just a teacher helping people awaken a little bit. Transmission of essence, that's your Pluto. Pluto's inescapable. So whether or not you think you are, you're going to get on the track of being a mainline teacher, like no nonsense, no bullshit. This is what you actually need to look at. Now, that part of you may or may not be comfortable for your partner. That might be scary as hell to certain partners, or exactly what's necessary for other partners. So when you change flags at some point in your life, you might have left behind the person that wasn't on a path of growth and found somebody who was a little bit in front of you to give you a bit of a boost. That might have been your story. That would be how I would direct my questions.
Beautiful. Okay. I love that. Thank you so much. I didn't expect to get a reading. But I hope that that helps people see. And so when you say that the Neptune comes into it, because I actually want to start using your method in some ways. The Neptune square, which is the Neptune in the sky right now. So I'll just so people can see that Neptune is at 1 Aries down here. So here's my chart, and here's the sky. Do you?
Two Aries is how we would call that. We must be very clear.
Thank you. So do you look at that to Neptune in Aries, or no, you just look at, the fact that Neptune is kind of challenging the apple cart with that Pluto square Venus and bringing it to attention?
Yeah, I would do both. I mean, the first thing to say is, it's not Neptune, it's Neptune Saturn conjunction. So even though it's a Neptune transit, no, it's not. It's a Saturn Neptune transit, different altogether. So Neptune's fluffy, airy, fairy pink of fluffiness. Oh no, Saturn in Aries is blitzkrieg. Once or two cycles ago, that's what Hitler used to take Europe all of a sudden. Like, it's dominant, fast, no messing about. That's what it was. Now it's like this, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's Saturn in Aries, and through Neptune, that would suggest our what should we call it, narrative of the nature of reality is suddenly changing, and there's nothing you can do about it. Overnight, we were like this, and now we're like that. So once upon a time, the USA was absolutely the founder of NATO and strongly supportive of Europe and on the good guys' side. And then all of a sudden, oh no, it's not. It's on Russia's side. And now, well, no, it's not. It's not either. It's halfway in between, and nobody knows. We just don't know what side America's on anymore. That changes our narrative. Our whole reality is shifted on that political level. Now, on a personal level, in your case, we're talking about a personal level because it's Venus. Somehow that kind of shift from, of course, they're on the good guy side now, oh no, they're not, is going on for you. Or it could be that because America is no longer the guarantor of the safety of the world, you're going to get emotional people coming to you saying, well, what do we do? I had this business, I had that future plan. What do we do? It might be that you relate to those people, and to have this politic in your mind is not outside of the realm of an astrologer's tools of trade. We need to know what people are responding to economically, and so the change in world politics is an aspect of your astrological toolkit.
Wow, James, you are excellent. So, what I'm going to tell everybody really quickly is that you actually have a class coming up. And so, for people who are on the spiritual and astrological path, you've got a couple openings. But why don't you kind of jump in and sort of say how what your class is about and how it's structured? Because I think that the right person watching this right now is going to be really excited to be a part of that.
All right, thank you. I mean, first of all, even though it's open to a few places, there's not many places available. And I'm very careful about whom to invite. So if people are interested in this, they need to talk to me more than once, and I need to get to feel whether or not they're suitable for the group. The group is called the Masterclass, and what we're doing is studying mastery to the level of awakening. And we're doing that using the sacredness of the number 7. My whole philosophy is based around the number 7. Shall I talk a little bit about the background there?
Yeah.
This is central to the class. But before I get into the explanations, there are 2 rules in the class. Basically, we conform to something which Sufism calls adab, which is sacred respect. Nobody ever, ever, ever interrupts anyone else, except for me in the case of need for controlling the group. If you interrupt people, you're probably kicked out of the group. It's really that sharp. It's that disciplined. This is for people that are ready to engage with mastery. And with mastery, you contain you carry your own water. You give the courtesy of somebody speaking. And when the whole group is based on that idea that nobody ever gets interrupted, then they say different things. They're not overcoming resistance. They're just allowing self-expression, knowing that it will be heard. None of us have received the attention that we wanted as children, not one of us. That's what we're healing today. We're giving people that level of attention. And I'm absolutely rigorous about this. So if you're interested in that level of discipline, then you're suitable for a path of mastery. The second rule is I'm the boss and nobody else can challenge that. It's absolutely dictatorial and tyrannical. And I don't feel any embarrassment about that at all, because we're moving towards developing what I call group consciousness. Group consciousness is where everyone simultaneously in the group moves into the same mood, atmosphere, consciousness, realization, at which point, which cannot happen without a tyrannical leader, at which point, when you're in that frame, the leader can just disappear. Now, I've learned how to do that. My career basically was for 30 years was as a dance teacher, teaching a meditative form of dance called Dances of Universal Peace. And my job was to get a group of dancers all into that state and just move into the highest level of consciousness in that group could reach by disappearing. And that created a vacuum in the middle of the circle, which was filled by spirit. And I just wasn't there. I knew how to lose myself in my music. So that's the highest form of this masterclass. We're basing our studies, which is like not only an entertainment, it's also a teaching, but it's not the highest purpose of the group, which is working out how to relate to each other on this highly developed spiritual level. And it's a zone that you get into. And it's not easy. I mean, we're nowhere near it yet, but I do know what I'm aiming for through dance. And we have just had a retreat and we got it there for just 5 people, but that's the challenge. Now, the group is based on the study of the number 7. In Sufism, which is my spiritual path, you study the 7 planes of consciousness. Light travels at different vibrational rates. In the slowest, it's physicality. The next level of slowness is astral plane. The next level is the plane of love, harmony, and beauty. Very lovely, beautiful, profound teachings, not easily taught to others. So I've kind of dumbed down the system a bit, invented my own system called the 7-word system, where vernacular words are used to describe the archetypes of these 7 planes. And the 7-word system is a cosmology. You give me any example, I can tell you the 7 words of love affairs, the 7 words of writing a novel, the 7 words of making a decision to go on holiday. You know, everything can be studied. No, the scope. Hello, the options. Thanks, the shine, the preference. Goodbye, the cost benefit decision. You know, please, the vision. Sorry, the feedback or the correction, course correction. Yes, the serendipitous inevitability that you're not going to get what you planned, however when you plan, well, you planned it. In a nutshell, the 7-word system. Now, we apply that to the Elven star. Now, the Elven star is a study of septiles, the 7th of a circle. So if my degree is 1538 of Taurus, the 2nd point of my Elven star would be actually the 20th degree of Libra. The 3rd point would be the 25th degree of Pisces. So I've got 7 points, which together are all relevant to me, but only on the various planes that we're studying. So when I'm on the Earth plane, my Sabian symbol, 16th degree of Taurus, is what I'm doing. But if I'm actually operating on the astral plane, in other words, I'm thinking, I'm creating, I'm making things up here, and I'm not concerned with physicality. Actually, it's more meaningful for me to study the Sabian symbol of the 2nd Elven star point, 20th Libra, which in my case is the study of traditional wisdom, which is Sufism. So when I'm trying to create my mind into an agency through which I can develop knowledge, I study traditional wisdom. Now, the 3rd is actually what touches the heart, purging of the priesthood, 25 Pisces. So that's Henry VIII getting rid of the monks because they were all fat, greedy bastards, you know, and we don't want that in spiritual life, you know. So it's just like, and that's, I really don't like it when people practice sacrilege. I really feel that's not my kind of person, you know. So, you know, the 4th point is mermaid, which is creativity. I'm a creative person that wants to express my creativity in the world, like the mermaid wants to make herself physical, a person, but she's in the realm of the unconscious, the sea, you know. So that my creativity is all my unconscious self come bubbling into the surface, you know.
So your Elven, the Elven star, your system, I know you said that it's available on your website as far as like you can enter your birthday and you'll be able to see your Elven star. I actually went to your website and I wasn't sure what that meant. So this is really helpful context. So then would you put an emphasis on those Elven star Sabian symbols versus the astrological Sabian symbols, or is it all a part of the package?
It's by degrees. My first and biggest experience of astrology was when I realized that not everyone is supposed to be the same. Like, really? My father made it really clear that if I wasn't like him, I was wrong. I mean, and now I get to be a Taurus, not an Aries, you know. And so that was my biggest experience of astrology, Linda Goodman's sun signs, you know. And then further and further and further, I studied it. So it depends where you are. What are you using it for? If you're at the level where you're trying to awaken as into spiritual mastery, then Elven Star is a tool beyond comparison.
I think that because everyone's not going to be able to take your class, you know, hopefully there'll be like at least one person watching that is a good fit. I know when I'm ready, I would like to be considered because I think that, you know, you have so much really unique wisdom that is really interesting. I do want to like have people know that to go to your website, they can learn so much about themselves and their journey, especially if they can, you know, get into that more poetic realm of the Sabian symbols.
Poetry is a good metaphor, yeah. Yeah. You're a good fit for the class. I'm happy to invite you now.
Thank you. Most of the people watching this channel know, I still have my son at home, and I take care of my mom who's in assisted living, and married, and I work a full-time job and I do this. So I think I would have to dedicate, and that was like, I would have to dedicate the time to actually sit with your teachings versus running around. So, it may be a few years before I've got the space. But I'm drawn to it. I'm called to it for sure. There's no doubt about that. So, what other, okay, we talked about, because, I do politics on this channel, not exclusively by any means. And just to give you a little bit about how that reading, resonated with me, I've shared on this channel, I actually no longer am a registered Democrat. Now, does that I will never vote for Republican ever again either. But, I am weighing and seeing, and I'm having this awakening of like where people have sold us out all along the road, and how the challenges we're facing now didn't need to be happening. When it comes to reading kind of the more mundane charts, and you had brought up the very important Saturn-Neptune conjunction, and then we're all going to be under this important Saturn-Neptune conjunction when it goes to 0 Aries in February. Is that something that you have your eye on, looking at like 1 degree Aries symbolism in
Well,
this?
there's always a context, isn't there? I mean, the context of this configuration is to include Pluto and Uranus. Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune are almost never in this kind of configuration. Once every century, no, they don't do that. So the trine sextile relationship between the 3 outer planets at the moment is very rare, not every century. And it takes back to a time in 577 BC when the 3 outer planets were aligned. And that was when Lao Tzu put forward the Tao Te Ching, the yin and yang, and the Tao. I mean, that there has been no subsequent wisdom that rivals that. And lots of other philosophers were around at the time. So we're in that cycle. Now, we won't be able to look at that in terms of events. Historians won't even know about this for 100 years, but that's what's going on. At the same time, and Saturn's in there, so possibly we will have a few clues, but we won't know. At the same time, as America's going through its Pluto return. Now, the biggest, most powerful nation of the world ever is going through the biggest emotional disturbance of all time. Having gone through that a little while ago, it's actually, you were seeing the implications of that. And America doesn't know where it's going. It's just elected a president that's decimated its influence in the world overnight. It's created an emotional maelstrom that is the economic maelstrom that will occur over the next few years. It'll take 10 years to even rebalance, let alone get back to the primary state it was in. So America's just thrown away a winner. I mean, it was the supreme country in the world in all fields, including morality and freedom and that kind of thing, until in my lifetime, and it's lost that. And now it's lost economic supremacy as well. Militarily, it won't be rivaled ever, but not in our lifetime anyway. But it's just thrown away its role as world leader. That's fascinating. I mean, who's going to step in? Not China, not Russia. They can't do it. Who's left? That's fascinating. And that degree of unknowing, we just don't know what's going on. That's healthy for spirituality. That's the stuff when spirituality comes in, because otherwise it's closed down by material certainties, contracts, and so on. That closes things down, contracts things, where there are no contracts. All the contracts have been torn up. All of these tariffs, they just tear up everything. And so spirituality now is Neptune's probable cause is to bring in a new spirituality. And there will be people speaking up various ideas, presumably, like now I promote the idea that seven's quite a good idea. You know, have a look at seven, that'll help. And there might be 1,000 other people saying their own ideas, you know, or maybe not. Who knows? We just don't know. We're in this state of complete unknowing.
I'm grateful for you bringing that in, because as someone with an astrology channel, I like the people that watch my channel. Obviously, they resonate with me. There are people though that from time to time are like, I just want to know what's going to happen. And, as humans, we all have that. It is incredibly uncomfortable to have this massive uncertainty that we find ourselves in. It is a very challenging time for at least half or more of our country here in the US, where, this isn't what we bargained for, and could see, what was coming, and are confused, very lost, very confused, so I do think that, I think actually they're all lost, whether you're rooting for this chaos or you're like terrified of it and desperately trying to say, like, why did you do this? We're lost, and to your point, that is a very spiritual place to be.
There's only one
Uncomfortable.
there's only one way out of this emotional difficulty that everybody's experiencing, and that's faith. You can't control the future. We've always pretended that we could. You can't. It's a lie. And here's an example of where that lie is exposed. No, you can't control the future on any level at all. On a personal level or a political level, it's nonsense. So what do? You trust. What do you trust? You trust yourself, you trust God, you trust the process, you trust life, whatever. And that trust is called faith at this level. I mean, I'm aware that Armageddon is obviously, something to look at, the possibility that this is it. Okay, so what? I mean, if it was that scary, I'd be scared. I'm not. I trust that if a tsunami was coming towards me, I'd know about it before the newspaper man told me. You know what I mean? I would feel it coming before I saw a new YouTube channel kind of video on it. If a tsunami's coming at us, we're going to feel it, because that's what we are. We're people that trust our feelings. I didn't feel anything but a greater freedom of opportunity to further my spiritual process. There's nothing to be afraid of. Well, you can be afraid of whatever you want to be afraid of, but I recommend faith. And faith isn't a gift. It's not a reward. It's not a spiritual, it's not a soul quality. It's just a decision. Faith is a decision, and there it is. If you got to decide now, do you want to be terrified or do you want to choose faith? I heartily recommend faith. It's a lot more comfortable, and it makes no difference to the outcome, whether you're terrified, anxious. It doesn't help. Faith does. Faith makes it ever so likely that the outcome's going to be good. So there it is. And that hasn't been the case before. Well, except maybe in the 1400s when the Black Death kind of had a similar effect.
Yeah, very interesting. I think I am personally evolving as a person and as an astrologer, and I'm doing far less of that. Here's what's going to happen, and kind of telling people to kind of come back into yourself, because my intuition is that the gods are really in control right now. Like, this is something that is bigger than we are. So the more that we can get into that place.
My approach is slightly different. You have some familiarity with quantum physics, maybe.
So
we make it all up. The observer determines whether light is a particle or a wave. Everybody should know that by now. It's 100 years old that Heisenberg came up with that one. So the observer creates reality. Now, what astrologers do, wrongly, in my humble opinion, they dump their neuroses, their fears on their clients, just to feel nice. No, that's black magic. What astrologers can do is to say, here are the energies. You can decide whether to interpret them this way or that. I heartily recommend you find every possible way to turn the narrative to suit you. Make every story suit you. You create your reality, so make it suit you. You know, everything that happens to you is to your advantage if you have faith. And people won't get this unless they need to get it. And right now, they need to get it, don't they? You know, so all in all, despite the discomfort, I don't want to be uncompassionate to the people that are wanting the future to be safe, but it ain't. That's a lie. Don't believe in a lie. Sort yourself out, claim your agency, create a positive future for yourself on the day-to-day level. That's where we can operate. Don't worry about politics or going to the moon or anything up there. Sort out your food, sort out your relationships locally, sort out your garden, sort things out on your level. That's your reality. Make everything that you do to the best of your ability. You can't do better, and have faith that that's enough. And if you don't have faith in yourself, then have faith in me. I know this. I know it. And I can't tell you how I know it or why I know it or what right I've got to know it. But if I know anything at all, and that's a bit of a question, I know this. Everything is fine. And this is exactly what I've been waiting for all of my life. I've been talking about this for 50 years. You know, this is what we were talking about in the 60s. This day was coming. Here it is. And if you want to know when the age of Aquarius begins, well, what about Pluto entering Aquarius? You know, AI, you know, that's kind of in keeping. This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. And some people would decide Armageddon's what I want, you know, and perhaps the majority of people will go away and have wars and things. It won't touch us that don't want that. We can find a way to sidestep all of that. It might be going on in our peripheral vision, but it won't come to my door. You know, that is what you need to use your esoteric knowledge and power for, to keep the robots in somebody else's backyard where they choose them, you know.
And that's a nicer, I think that's a, not nicer, but it's, I think it's a description of a concept that resonates more with me than when people are like, you can manifest, blah, blah, blah. Like a lot of that is very optimistic, hopeful thinking, but not, you're not feeling it. You're not really believing it. So I'm hearing you that it's like we do manifest. Everything is just our own creation. You know, our successes, our beliefs really do manifest. But I think a lot of times what you hear from that more superficial new agey manifestation is not feeling it, it's thinking it. It's not believing it. It's you know, it's yeah. What you're gonna say something.
The category of new agey person, I call them the pink and fluffies.
Okay.
Like, use your intelligence. It can't possibly that way. You can't suddenly be a magician because you've decided that you've read a book on magic. If you want to be a magician, then you study it for quite a long time. If you want to be an accountant, it takes 5 years. Magician, 30, you know, and it works, you know, and that's what I've come from. You know, I've studied magic for a bit longer than that. You know, that's what you need to do. You need to study the stuff. I've studied magic full time for 40 years.
So
You know,
anything else that, you know, I think you've given me and everyone watching a lot to think about. I did want to introduce the Sabian symbols to people that are not familiar with them because I think they're a very powerful tool. I love your work. And if you are looking at a piece of your chart and you want deeper knowledge, like I said, James has a YouTube channel where he'll kind of give these little readings. Like you can put together your own little reading, you know, if you know how to figure out your chart, but it is really important that you bump it up a degree, like you round up. So, you know, because that was, I think, a mistake that a lot of people do make is they'll just look at the degree and say, oh, it's 3 degrees, but you go up to the next degree because there's minutes.
yeah, well, these esoteric mysteries are hidden. There's a veil for a reason. And people that want to get the knowledge without bothering to study how to get the knowledge, they're excluded from the knowledge. That's how it works. You can't just fumble into this and think it'll work. The discipline necessary is a part of your wisdom. And if you haven't got the discipline, you can't be trusted with the wisdom.
So now, do you have like a school, or, what is your sort of like, you have all this content, like what is your legacy? Like how, like, do you have like an organization that helps manage all of the content that you've written and produced? Or, how does that work?
Well, we have an organization called Sacred Seven Academy, and there are people within that, and they've got their own vision, which is only made possible by using the techniques that we're studying. So I'm in mentorship relationship with these various people. And so one, we've worked out the 7 steps of inner guidance, and another, the fundamentals of the Elven star to teach music, and another, the 7 qualities of creating a sustainable community with eco-psychology. So we've got various projects. Another, the 7 words, creating children's stories to teach them astrology and the 7-word system. So the various projects here using the methods to try and get them out there. And then people will find their own students by presenting their own ideas.
Well, my North Node is in the 12th house. So all of this in Sag. So all of this really sings to what I'm here to learn and to do in this lifetime. But as we all know, we're all on a path, and I'm still learning. So thank you for gracing us with all this knowledge.
Explains your busy life with all that 6th house South Node energy, doesn't it?
I know. I'm working on it. I promise. I'll be in touch about the details of your class, because if nothing else, I'm very curious, because I really do resonate with the work that you do.
Yeah, you need to go on retreat now and again with 12th house North Node and Sag, don't you?
Wouldn't that be nice?
Huh?
It would be nice, wouldn't it? Yeah. I'm working on
It will be nice, makes it likelier to happen, doesn't it?
it. Okay, it will be nice. It will be nice. It will happen. It will happen. Maybe this is the year. Maybe this is the year that I throw off all my worldly obligations and sit on a mountaintop.
That's what I did when I was 33. I was a very, very invested businessman, quite rich. And I got up one morning, I thought, no, I can't do this. And 2 days later, I was gone. And several weeks later, I was in Nepal with a backpack. And, I just said, nah, this isn't me. And somebody said, how are you going to survive and money and everything? Yeah, I'll be all right.
Yeah, no, it's coming. But I have 4, as you said, I have a Cancer stellium and a Virgo moon. So, it's coming, and it's here in a lot of ways. Like I really have created this beautiful channel, and I have so many wonderful people that that work with me and take my classes, which, I think I'm the baby version of you. Like I kind of give them the little taste. And so then they, the right people, then they go on to do more, right? So
Well, let me help if I can.
okay, I love it. Well, everyone, please check out James's work. If nothing else, check out his website and his YouTube if you are interested in the Sabian symbols. And there is a reason and a season for it all. The universe is conspiring to help us. And maybe we need to add choose faith to the end of that, because I think that's the message that I'm getting from this very powerful conversation. So thank you so much, James.
Thank you, Dabney.